Hi, this is David Williams. I'm here with Barbara this morning. And Barbara, the reason I did not say your last name just now is because I don't want to mispronounce it. So I'm going to let you tell us your first and last name and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, David, thank you. I'm Barbara Hemphill. I am the founder of Productive Environment Institute. And our passion is helping professionals organize their lives, organize their spaces, their offices, so they can accomplish their work and enjoy their lives. I've been doing it for 40 years. I started in 1978. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina today, but in 1978, I lived in New York City. I had moved there from India, where I'd adopted 3 orphan children, one of whom was special needs. My husband worked for a nonprofit and didn't make enough money for us to live there. So it's like, okay, I have to do something. But I wanted my kids to be first. So I said, what's a problem in the world that people are complaining about that I can solve, that they will pay me for? And I heard people talking about being disorganized and about clutter. And I first learned that paper was the biggest source of clutter. And actually it still is for a lot of individuals now and a lot of companies. And I wrote a book called Taming the Paper Tiger. So I became known as the Paper Tiger Lady.
So, and I'll let you expand on that a little bit about the Paper Tiger lady, and some of what you just said, because out of all the people that I've done, I don't know, somewhere 15-ish or so of these so far since I've launched Hope Now 2020, just launched it in April. So it's still, as of this recording, very new. So at least I've done enough to kind of know how this flows. And I can tell you that I have not had anybody really talk about the organizational skills. People have talked about mindset or getting focused on things and stuff of that nature, but have not really talked about how organization plays into all of that. And I know that although I'm not very organized all the time, that when things are less cluttered and when I'm more organized, it makes me feel better. And so you know that from 40 years of experience. So talk through the process of what that looks like and how it impacts people both in their personal life and their business life, because I'm sure if they're happier at home, they're happier at work. And if they're happier at work, it's vice versa, right? It happens both ways. So kind of walk me through some of those things. And along the way, share some tips, if you would, about, obviously you're professional, you've got certain skills, but for somebody that may just want to be picking up some advice, here's 3 things you can do to start this process. So I'm going to let you dive in. I'll take some notes and I may say, well, can you expand on that? But I want to give you a few minutes to kind of go obviously beyond what you just shared there in the beginning.
Well, David, my business has been based on 4 words. And those 4 words is clutter is postponed decisions. I learned that originally from closets. I mean, if your closet's full, it's probably because you haven't decided whether you're going to lose the 10 pounds you need to lose to get back into that favorite pair of pants again, or the exercise equipment that looks so great on Home Shopping Network that you haven't got out. Or one of the really big ones is something that was given to you by someone that you love, but you want to be responsible, but you don't know what to do with it. So clutter is postponed decisions, and it applies to paper. And here's the good news. You wanted a tip. There's only 3 things you can do with a piece of paper: file, act, or toss. File means I don't know if I'll ever need it, but I don't have the guts to throw it away. So that's going to create what traditionally we call a filing system, but we teach people to do what we call a finding system, so that if you need it, you can find it. Act means, okay, the ball's in my court. This is a bill to pay, a phone call I need to make, a discussion with a colleague. So then you need to have a system. We're all about systems, and we use the acronym SYSTEM, S, saving you space, time, energy, and money. That's what a system is. Every time there's something you have to do over and over, pay a bill, whatever, you have to have a system. And then the last one is toss. Research shows that 80% of what we keep, we never use. I think that it's closer to 95%. One of my good coaches, Perry Marshall, says we used to live in an 80-20 rule world. Now we live in a 95-5 rule, that there's actually only 5% of the stuff we have that really helps us accomplish our work and enjoy our lives.
That's interesting. It doesn't surprise me that it would be 95-5, right? Because we all, I think, and now in your case, you're a professional organizer, so I would imagine your world hopefully looks a little bit different than most of us who are still quite, unorganized. And we've all seen the desk, with the stacks of papers, right? And then sometimes it's like, if I move this paper, am I going to be able to find it? Which is interesting that you mentioned that file and find, because that's one of the key parts, is actually being able to go back and find something. I would imagine from an efficiency standpoint, so based on what you just shared, having a system and coming up with, especially with the paper, with the three things that you mentioned, my guess is that efficiency leads to better productivity, which leads to a lot of other good stuff. So let's talk about what that looks like when somebody really takes to heart what you teach, you write about, and put that into action, and then how that actually overflows to other parts of their life. Some of the experiences that you have seen that people, just because obviously it gives them more time to do other things if they're efficient in the area of life that you're talking about.
Well, and we could talk for so long. It's hard to figure out where to start, but I want to dispel one myth that you mentioned. You probably assume that I'm a naturally organized person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's not true. I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I'm a right-brained. I'm a musician by training. I love to start things. I have trouble finishing them. I love the big picture and I hate details. So part of the reason that my systems, and I say mine, but it's ours because we certify productivity consultants. We have them all around the world. Part of the reason they work is because they were designed for me. So I don't look at people's office and say, oh, how could you do that? I know exactly how they can do it, because if I didn't have my own systems, that's what would happen to me. So I just wanted to dispel that myth. The second thing is, organizing in and of itself has no value. Yeah, there has to be a why. So we always start when someone says, I want to get organized, or I need your help. The question we always ask is, why? What will be different if you do use our service? If you do work with us, what will be different? And so we have a 5-step process that we use over and over. And I'll give you these 5 steps. You can use them for everything from, one of my clients called me and said, we just used your process to organize our family vacation. So the 5 steps are, first one is state your vision. So it's like, okay, do you want to clean the clutter off of the kitchen counter? Do you want to organize your closet? Do you want to organize your computer desktop? Are you using SharePoint and you want to organize it? What is it? And what's it going to look like? And what's it going to feel like? So state your vision. That's your why.
Did you say state or say?
State your vision.
Okay, great. Because I wanted to make sure that I had that right. So yes, great.
State your vision. The second one is identify your obstacles. What have you tried that didn't work? What are you afraid of? What might prevent you from succeeding? Who might prevent you from succeeding? What is the issue? The third one is commit your resources. So it's like, okay, how much money are you willing to invest to solve this problem? How much time? Who can help you? Who's your champion? Who's your advocate? Just what is it that's going to? So then we go to step 4, which is the major part of the theme, which is design and execute your plan. So in order to reach this vision, overcoming these obstacles with these resources, what is your plan? And then step 5, which is where most people fail, is sustain your success. Now you notice that the common word in all 5 of those is your. Organizing is an art form. It has no value in and of itself. It is simply a skill to help you accomplish your work and enjoy your life, whatever that is.
I could see how those 5 points could be used in numerous things. So I appreciate you laying those out. And I wanted to clarify, because I'm jotting down notes and I don't want to end up repeating something later and having it wrong. So state your vision. And with that said, you state your vision, identify obstacles, commit your resources, design and execute your plan and sustain your success. Is that it?
That's exactly.
So I took my notes well, right?
That's called the productive environment process. And that process we just use, over and over to help people get whatever it is that they want. And they can just use it. And we go into companies, and if you teach all the employees this language, then when they're dealing with a problem, they know where it is that it is. Going forward, everything that you say, think, or feel about that vision is one of those things. Maybe your vision changed. You started saying you wanted to do this, and then 6 months into it, things changed. And you said, well, we need to change it. That doesn't mean it's wrong. That's the only way we constantly reinvent ourselves. That's how we succeed. So it may mean there's a new obstacle. It may mean there's a new resource. But every time you're not able to sustain your success, you go back to the other thing, and it just becomes a way of life that you can use all the time. And you can teach it to children.
The way of life piece, that's a key point, right? For those who, and this is not me, but for those who exercise like they're supposed to regularly and do those things, it becomes a way of life. And so what you've shared with us today, to sustain something, it has to become a way of life. And what I'd like for you to share, if it pops in your head, whether it's your own personal success story, or maybe an executive or a company, well, you don't have to mention their name, obviously, but something that you've really seen like, wow, I got this, or they got this, where you've just been proud of the moment for yourself personally, or seeing somebody else implement this. Is there a particular example that you probably have several over 40 years, but as I'm saying this, is there one or two that pops in your head that you'd like to share?
Well, one of the things that we're really passionate about now is there are lots of organizing consultants that work with individuals, but our passion is working with teams, groups of individuals. And so we love going into companies. And one of the services that we offer is called a productivity party, or a productive environment day. And it's actually an event. We turn it into an event where employees are empowered to get rid of what they don't use. And we were talking about the 80-20 rule, and that's true in companies as well. There's equipment that doesn't work, and supplies that they haven't used, and files they're not using, and all that kind of stuff. And so we work with management ahead of time to come up with retention guidelines, so there's no risk. You don't have to risk throwing anything away that's important. We bring in shredding bins and recycling bins, and we do what we call a trash to treasure, which is a place where you can put flower vases and books and personal things that you don't really want. And then during the day, anybody could come in and take anything they want, and that makes it fun. We're trying to make it a party. We're trying to make an event thing. We give prizes for the funniest thing, the oldest thing, the most valuable thing, whatever. And then, and we have, one of the most important things is a staging area, because in every company, employees have things that belong to the company, and it's in their office, but they don't know what to do with it. So a staging area is a place they go put it there, and then at the end of the day, management can come in and figure out what to do with that. So we I have two stories I've done many of those, but I have two on the opposite end. One was a company with 400 employees. And so we did 12 days. So every employee participated for one day. At the end of the 12 days, we had shredded 33,000 pounds of paper alone. That's just what we shredded. That doesn't count what we recycled and what we put in the trash. And we spent half a day on physical and half on digital. The digital, we had the IT department measure it. And in that time, we deleted almost 1/2 of the files on the server.
Wow.
Had a company that was moving, relocating. Theoretically, that everybody had cleared out the clutter, so they were ready to move. And we went in and we were there for 2 days. And in 2 days, we got rid of 3 more tons of things that they would have moved. So clutter is everywhere. And I wrote a book, Less Clutter, More Life. And the premise of it is that clutter, physical and digital clutter, is a symptom of emotional and spiritual clutter. The reason we're afraid to get rid of things, the reason we have clutter is we are afraid. We are afraid we will make a mistake. We are afraid we'll offend someone. We're afraid we'll want it back. We're afraid we'll forget. And so part of what we do is we help people deal with that emotion. we have what we call the cost factor. You can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price. And the price is time, space, money, and energy. So our job is not to say to somebody, oh, you don't need that. We don't have a right to say that. I don't have a right to say what you need to keep, but I do have a responsibility to help you understand what it's going to cost you in time, space, money, and energy, so then you can make an educated decision, so you can clear whatever is your clutter, so you can accomplish your work and enjoy your life.
It's amazing that your story, what you're sharing today, and how exciting it actually is, because you are, like I said at the beginning, somebody unique as far, well, everybody has their own uniqueness, but I haven't had somebody with your skill set join me for one of these conversations. So I'm visualizing a lot of stuff as you're saying it, which is, you know, what we do. And I think as me as a photographer, I'm going to visualize a lot more anyway. But hearing you say some of the things that you said, the party thing, it actually sounds like it's a lot of fun. And I'm assuming it, you know, it could start slow, but by the time people get going, I'm sure it's a lot of fun, and they're probably ready for a drink at the end of the day.
Well, that's interesting. You are exactly right, David, because when I go in the morning, or whoever's goes in the morning, we start the seminar with, sometimes it takes an expert to take out the trash. That's how we start the day. And employees are, oh, like, I have real work to do today. And besides that, I don't want to throw away anything. So one of the questions we ask is, how many of you left home this morning with more clutter around than you prefer? Well, 50% will immediately raise their hands, and statistically it's true for 80%. So we'll say, okay, everything we're going to talk about today here applies at home. Well, now they're listening, but they're usually listening for what they're going to tell somebody else, their significant other, their spouse, their kids. So we make them take a pledge. They have to raise their hand and take a pledge that they will listen for what they're going to do, not what they're going to tell somebody else to do. And it's so interesting. I did one not too long ago, about 18 employees. And at the beginning of the day, I mean, they just looked just so discouraged. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the energy level in the company had just absolutely skyrocketed. And people were saying, oh, I'm going home and clean out my garage. I'm going to go home and clean out my attic. Because when people understand, people do not understand that the reason they struggle with clutter is emotion. And I've told the story many times that when people, if you know someone that would be classified as a hoarder or a pack rat, I guarantee you that if you ask enough questions, you would find out that that person had, at some point in their life, had a severe emotional loss. I was autographing books at Barnes & Noble in New York, and a young man came up to me and he said, my apartment is full of papers, and I come home from work every night and say, okay, tonight's the night I'm going to clean this up. And he said, I literally become physically paralyzed. And literally the tears kind of came to his eyes. And he said, my mother died when I was 6. Are you telling me that I have to deal with the emotion of losing my mother before I can handle my papers? And I said, well, I can tell you this. I can tell you that if you find someone you trust, probably not a family member, might be, but probably not. If you find someone you trust that will sit with you and help you decide which of those papers you really want and need to keep, and you do it, you will solve the paper problem. And in my experience, you will also deal with the emotion of your mother. I said that one time at a speech I was giving at a university, and a woman walked up to me and she said, well, you just saved my marriage. I said, wow. I said, that's pretty dramatic. What do you mean? And she said, I came here to this conference with the intention of going back and telling my husband, to whom I married for 13 years, that I was leaving because he's a pack rat and I have allergies and I can't clean the house and he won't get rid of anything. She said, but I never understood until I heard you that it wasn't that he wouldn't get rid of things, but that he couldn't. His mother died when he was 7. She said, I don't know what I'm going to do now, but I'm willing to go back and try again. I said, may I make a suggestion? She said, sure. I said, go back and say something to the effect of, I never understood before how important all this stuff is to you. Let's figure out how we can keep it and still live together. And I followed up with them for about 8 months. And once she said that, the dynamics changed, because what happens is when someone who's a keeper lives with someone who's a thrower away, they're always trying to force the other one to be that way. And the opposite, it makes it worse. It gets worse. It's, you don't need that. Yes, I do. You don't need that. Yes, I do.
Right.
And that's what happens. And as soon as he felt heard, then he began to say, well, I really don't need this. And then they began to take pictures of some of his collections, and he could get what. So I followed for 8 months, and they made some major progress.
You've shared some awesome stories, and that was a great one to close out the session with, because being married 30 years myself, I get that, you know, my wife and I don't agree on everything, and 30 years of experience has taught me that you've got to find some balance, right? And we still, like most marriages, we're going to have our roadblocks, but the story that you shared about being heard and kind of understanding the other person's position, you know, before we jumped on this call together and started recording, I don't think I would have ever thought that a professional organizer would share a story about saving somebody's marriage. So that's not something I don't think I would have envisioned, but I appreciate all the stories you shared, all the advice you shared. Our time has gone, you know, quickly together. So what I want to do now is, I know you came on here to share some advice, share some positive things for people that are listening or watching. But what I like to do for my guests is just give them an opportunity to say, here's my website. If you're an author, you know, here's my book. You can find out here, whatever you want to do to close out. You know, I'm saying this because I want people to realize, obviously they have not heard a sales pitch from you the whole time, but go ahead in these closing moments, Barbara, and just share your website, how to reach you on social media, things of that nature.
Thank you, David. Well, I wrote a book called Less Clutter, More Life. It's available on Amazon. It's available in physical copy or digital, but I think you'll want the physical copy because it's full of beautiful photographs. My colleague, Louise Wanier, did the photographs. It's less than an hour read. It's a very small book, and it is the premise about clutter being a symptom of emotional physical and digital clutter being a symptom of emotional and spiritual clutter. And it has the 5 steps in it. So it basically gives examples of how you apply the 5 steps. So the book, Less Clutter, More Life, is my legacy. I wrote it because I'm 73 years old. My goal is to give a speech when I'm 100, but I wanted to write something that if I died, it was my legacy. So that's what Less Clutter, More Life is. And then our company is, we have a website, productiveenvironment.com. And if you go to productiveenvironment.com, you can fill out a scorecard about your productivity. It takes maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 if you really agonize over things. When you submit that scorecard to us, then you get a 30-minute complimentary discovery session from one of our consultants, in which we help you figure out what you need to do to accomplish your work and enjoy your life. And I would say 90% of those calls don't end up anything else, so just that call and putting the person on the right path. But periodically, then it's like, okay, this is how we could help you. I just had one of those calls this morning with someone who's introduced us to a company with several thousand employees. So yeah, just never know. But I'm really passionate about helping people eliminate clutter, because I believe, if you think about it, every problem in the world comes down to some form of clutter. It's clutter in systems, or clutter in relationships, or clutters in companies. I talked to a financial planner. People often have in their portfolio things that's clutter because of their emotion. It was given to them by someone. So you can apply that in many different ways. So go to productiveenvironment.com. There's lots of information there, and it'll direct you to a network where there's lots of free videos and resources.
Well, Barbara, I appreciate you sharing your book, your legacy, as you called it, as well as the website. The information, you had sent me some information that hopefully I have that where I can list that in there in the bio, in the description section of the YouTube video, as well as the description of the podcast. I'd like to definitely make sure that I have that information to mention it. That way people can just click on the link to the website and can see the title of the book. It's been a pleasure having you, Barbara. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the opportunity, and you too. Accomplish your work and enjoy your life.
Thank you.